Bears lose 10 in a row. It's the second time in the last 3 years the Bears have had a 10-game losing streak in season. It's the way the 2022 season ended, with a 10-game losing streak. They would lose their first 4 of 2023.
That's hard to do.
Yeah, it's so hard to do. Again, they've never, before the Poles Eberflus regime got here, as bad as Chicago Bears football has been for the last several decades, they've never had a 10-game losing streak. Never. I believe the longest was 8. And they've done it twice now. In no matter how many times they've rebuilt, or they were 1-13 with Sayers and Butkus, they've never had a 10-game losing streak. And now under Ryan Poles, they've done it twice, including one year when he said it was time to win. And they could break the record for a single-season losing streak next week against the Packers. And how many has it been now since they've lost to the Packers?
11?
It's 11?
I think it's at 11.
Like, think about this. If they have any desire on keeping Ryan Poles on paper, you could keep the general manager that goes into the offseason with an 11-game losing streak overall and a 12-game losing streak to your division rival. Not that he's had a whole roll into the entire losing streak, but it's six would be to them if they don't win next week. So you could lose 12 in a row to the Packers, 11 in a row overall, and the Bears could say, yep, he gets to pick our next head coach, and we'll probably extend him because he's only got a year left.
It's so hard to get your mind around all of it. If you do have a level of pride or you are affected by embarrassment, the last 2 games have been on prime time. And neither game, I guess it was 2 out of the last 3, right?
With Thanksgiving.
Right. Well, you had Minnesota was a Monday nighter,
That's right. So how many have been standalone games?
Right. So what'd you have? You had Minnesota on Monday night, then you had Detroit on a Sunday on a normal, but then you had Thursday, right?
Yeah.
So you have been in front of the national audience 2 out of the last 3 weeks. And I didn't, when I watched the game, I was doing something with the family. I watched it early this morning and kind of listened to some of the commentary. And then I watched a little bit more of it as well. And I don't think that Kirk and Al were being disrespectful, but there was nothing that they could say positive really about this organization. It's almost as if we are a punchline around the National Football League. And to go back and reference what happened in Washington coming out of the bye and then think that, the following 10 weeks have been what they've been, it's unbelievable. It really is. I could have never in my wildest dreams ever guessed. Meller asked us a while ago, I forget when it was, and the odds were...
8 games remaining.
8 games remaining, and Meller was like, what's more likely? I think you even said that with
it was
fewer.
4-4 or 0-8.
Yes.
And I was adamant 4-4. Because 0-8 is so hard to do.
Well, even wasn't there when there was 5 games left. The predictor, the model, the analytics said, that it was more likely they would win a game than not win a game. What was that, with 4 games left or 5 games?
4, because they had the 4 divisional opponents.
It was
still
17% chance for them to go winless
They're
in their
not
last 4.
beating Green Bay on Sunday. What's the early line on that game? That game probably isn't going to mean anything for the Packers, is it? Because they're not going to win.
Well, there's got to be a seeding thing there, right?
I haven't looked at that.
Unless they don't care about that.
It's a good question, but I don't anticipate them not playing their guys, and even if they don't,
it'll be if the Packers beat the Vikings this Sunday. Theoretically, the Packers might have a shot to move up to the 5 seed, but it's basically they're either the 5 or 6 seed. So how much are the Packers going to care, or would they rather rest their guys to make sure people are healthy going into the playoffs for the Packers? They're not going to have a lot to play for.
There's a chance that if they win out, they're going to be a 13-win team. They'd get the Vikings, like you said, Meller, and then the Bears. That'd be a 13-win season for them. That'd be 13-4 for them. I don't think they want to go into the postseason having lost to us. So I wouldn't expect the Bears to win this game.
I agree with you, but they may rest everybody because they can't win the division. They can beat the Vikings, but then the Lions would win the division. So the Packers cannot win the NFC North anymore. They've already lost that chance.
Or maybe what they do is they just kind of dumb it down a little bit and play their guys, because Jordan Love's playing as good a football as any quarterback in the league right now.
Maybe they're just good enough to beat the Bears with Malik Willis. They've already won a couple games with him.
There you go. I forgot about that.
Sure. You can't look, you can't score more than 3 at home right now.
Right.
So
that was a crappy Seahawks team, or at least offensively last night. Geno Smith was not good.
No, he was not. I was very surprised by how much I disliked the way he played. I'm like, boy, this is the Geno Smith, and I've watched a lot of them, but he really looked bad yesterday. I've never. This is honestly. I know people get hyperbolic on these airwaves or when they're on their own radio show. I think most people know I come from a fan standpoint. This is the weirdest, craziest, most disappointing season I've ever lived through of my life, of my entire life. Going from 4-2 with a hope of Caleb Williams, with a hope of coming off of London, with this close to going from 5-2, with the loss of the Hail Mary, to still thinking they could salvage something, to completely wrecking everything, to becoming this such an unlikable team, to thinking you like the general manager, to understanding that maybe the whole resume is really fake. I've never the Trustman the Trustman year has nothing on and the last year of Trustman has nothing on this season. I've said that for the last few weeks now. This is the worst. This is the worst of the worst. I covered Dave Wanstead's 0-7 start. That was a Patriots-like team under Bill Belichick compared to this team. This is what from underachieving of the star players to the coaching malfunctions to the roster overestimation. It's a complete train wreck.
Yeah.
I want to play you some polls. So Ryan Poles does speak to Jeff Joniak on each and every pregame. And a lot of times he leaves us scratching our head. Like I've been shocked by the lack of accountability, by the lack of self-awareness. There were a couple of things yesterday. Let's play the first one, Meller, where he talks about not fixing stuff in the preseason. Joniak did a good job of having him reflect a little bit more on the totality of this season. And I'm highlighting this. He's going to talk about looking back to the preseason where maybe they could have fixed some stuff. And as you listen to this, my question is, well, why didn't you do it in real time? And what were these things? Take a listen to Ryan Poles.
Yeah, I think it's something broader and something we've talked about a lot here.
So I think the initial question was reflect on it and why you guys don't score early in these games. I think the stat is now the Bears have scored 17 total points in the first quarter all this year. The entire first quarter of 16 regular season games, they've scored 17 points total. So why, is it something you could put your finger on, or is it something bigger? And this is how he answered.
Yeah, I think it's something broader and something we've talked about a lot here in terms of trying to find solutions for it, which has been, clearly difficult to do. And some of it, I believe, stems back from training camp. It's just some of the things that, either weren't addressed, they weren't detailed enough, whatever that is. But there's a lot to learn from this, and we got to make sure that we continue to fight and scrap to figure out ways to get over this hump, because there are going to be ups and downs in the season, and your ability to break a trend and get things back into a positive light is key for any team to have success. So we have to figure it out.
I don't know what there was that you didn't address in training camp that you couldn't have addressed over the course of the last 3 months since training camp.
Is this about the Waldron not communicating or coaching them hard enough?
Oh, I'm so sick of that.
I mean, again, and all he does week after week, even up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, is rave about their culture. rave about their culture. We've got a good culture. We love the character of our building. So if you love it so much, why wasn't this handled in training camp in real time?
I wonder, again, like a lot of times you hear them speak in a very vague term or tone. And I'd be totally interested in hearing what were those things that you thought kind of went under the radar, or you didn't button up, or you didn't cross your T's or dot your I's. What were those things that occurred in training camp that couldn't be addressed over the course of the last several months?
Yeah, and did you recognize it then and nothing was done about it? Or are you just realizing now that it wasn't? Like, there's so many questions from that answer that I have. And again, this is why I don't trust him with evaluating. I don't trust him with the way he evaluates his culture. I don't trust him with the way he evaluates his line. I don't trust him with the way he evaluates his coaching staff. Like, what can I trust him on? Like, other than just keeping a guy because you don't want to change out a general manager again, I don't understand why Ryan Poles deserves to stay too. Here is more, and this is a little deeper on going forward. And again, I highlight a term that he uses here, that they've got a clear vision. So listen for that. And this, it sure sounds like this is a guy who's been reassured that he's coming back. Here's Ryan Poles talking about correcting a lot of the Bears' issues and moving ahead to 2025.
Yeah, and I haven't taken the full time that's needed to reflect on everything, but I know that we have a lot of really talented players on this roster that are going to be here in 25. You see the progress with Caleb every single week, and you understand that there's impact players on this team, and there's a clear vision on what we need to take the next step, and we have the resources and the flexibility to do that. So, I think the important thing is getting through this season and then taking that time to really detail that out. It also will be important to make sure we're aligned with, whatever head coach we have coming in the door. That's going to be important. So having that alignment paired with the vision of what we need to improve the roster is going to be important.
It's a humbling league and a humbling sport. Has this been a humbling season?
Yeah, this game is hard. This game is challenging. You can be prepared for a lot, and it still will throw you curveballs that you have to be on your toes and ready for. And it definitely will send you into a place of reflection of what do I need to do to improve, and that's from a player, a coach, front office. It's important that we continue to grow, continue to improve, and that's going to be important for us to get to where we need to be.
All hollow stuff, but again, like, I highlight the part where he says we have a clear vision of what we need to move forward into 2025. We've got to be on the same page with a coach that we bring in the door. It sure sounds like, whether that's the clear vision he and Warren have, and his scouting staff, and then about the coaching search.
I felt that way last week when he spoke in the pregame show as well. You realize I'm doing all this now. I'm looking at this, a lot of this stuff, and in the 3 years, and you just try to put it all into perspective. Year one was a complete teardown. Yeah. I get all of that. But the teams that you realize in 3 years, minus one game, they have 3 wins in 3 years against teams that finished their seasons over 500. They beat the San Francisco 49ers, who finished 13-4 in 2022. They opened up this regime, remember, with that win.
Right, in the monsoon.
Yes, they were 3-14 in that season. They beat San Francisco, Houston, and New England. The following year, last year, they beat Washington, Las Vegas, Carolina, Minnesota, Detroit, Arizona, and Atlanta. The only team that finished the season with a winning record was Detroit. And this year, the 4 wins have come against teams that are currently 3-12, 4-11, 3-12, and 9-6. And the win you had over the Rams, you won that game at home without Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and they were starting 3 backups on their offensive line. And you beat them by 1 score.
So it's three wins of winning teams?
Yes, they've won 3 games against teams that have ended their seasons with winning records. Again, go back to 2022 when they got to town. They were 3-14, right? They beat San Francisco that ended 13-4. Houston, that they only won 3 games that year, and New England was 8-9. The following year, the only team they beat that was above 500 was Detroit. They were 12-5 that year. And this year they beat the Rams, who are currently 9-6 and will end the season over 500. And again, they were a team that was completely decimated by injury.
All right, so how many division games have they won again? They won 2 last year, 0 the first year, and 0.
They've won 2 division games in 3 years.
So they've won 2 division games.
Yes.
I'm just compiling this. He's won 14 games total, right? His old team, the Chiefs, have won 15 this whole year.
14-36 now, right? Aren't they 14-36, something like that? I think it is. I think it was 14-35. I believe it's 14-36 at this point over the course of the last 3 years. You got 1 game remaining, and that will get you to what, 51? You got 17 times 3? Yes. So it's 14-36 at this point, with 3 wins over teams that finished their seasons above 500.
So, like, again, when I read you this as we compile this, they have 14 wins total in 3 years. They have 3 wins against winning teams in 3 years.
Yes.
They have 2 total division wins in 3 years.
Correct.
And they have 2 10-game losing streaks in 3 years. The Bears had never had a 10-game losing streak before they got here. Like, you trust that?
This is the worst stretch of 3 seasons based on all this in your lifetime, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not even close. And again, we give them the first year. The first year you tore it down. But a lot of these teams haven't even needed that year. Like the Commanders didn't need this year. Or the Vikings changed out their regime with the coach and the front office, and they won 13 games that first year. They had to step back last year with 7. They've won 13 games this year. Like Houston, did Houston need time to tear it all down? They didn't.
No.
After they were in position, like there are a lot of these teams that go right back up, and that's what I mean. What are we to trust? Why? Tell me, like for the guys who do say Poles does deserve more, the continuity, Silvy. I was arguing with our CEO of the company yesterday about continuity, about doing this again. I don't want to do this again, and I would never want to do it again if they showed me something. But when you take Darnell Wright over Jalen Carter, I can't trust that. When you have to replace 4 linemen out of 5 in the 4th year of a rebuild, I can't trust that. You know, when my quarterback's been sacked 70 times, and a lot of it's on Caleb, I can't trust that. What give me something why I should trust Ryan Poles.
And by the way, the teams they've beaten finished their seasons at 87, 142, and 1. That's the winning percentage of the teams they've beaten in their 14 wins.
You were able to figure that out this quickly?
Yeah.
That's good by you. 87 what?
87, 142, and 1 is the
142?
collective. Yes. Well, yeah, they've only beaten 3 teams that finished the season with winning records.
So the teams that the 14 wins the Bears have compiled have had a record overall of 87, 142, and 1.
Yes. Now, I will check my math, but I've gotten all their 7 wins from last year. There are 3 wins in 2022, and there are 4 wins so far this year. It's stark. It is very stark.
The numbers are a disaster, of course. But I think, too, Silvy just pointed out a lot of teams don't take that teardown year in the NFL, but Ryan Poles was afforded the luxury to do so in Matt Eberflus's first year as head coach.
And we all knew it was the right decision.
So that you were given that grace period as a GM. Oftentimes, when GMs are given that grace period, it's with the hope and promise that will deliver you something better on the other end. And now, 3 years later, you can make the argument the roster is worse, and all the benefit of the doubt that he was given heading into the season with some of the offensive linemen, with the Montez Sweat trade. In retrospect, it looks awful.
Yeah, we've said that a lot. Like you get rid of Montgomery because you don't want to pay a back who, maybe a little more than a guy. He's a guy. And then you bring in a guy in Swift and you pay him more money.
By the way, the guy that the Lions let go, DeAndre Swift,
right,
to get David Montgomery.
Yes,
you brought him in and paid him more money.
Okay, and then you want to get rid of Roquan. Fine, understandable. He wants a lot of money for an off-ball linebacker. Then you pay his replacement, who's a much worse player, a lot of money too, in Tremaine Edmonds. So you're worse there too. Where are you better? Like a lot of these, like Khalil Mack and Sweat. You know what? You got rid of Mack, you got rid of Quinn to bring in Sweat.
I think a lot of people could make the argument that Khalil Mack
is still
in the last couple of years,
yeah. Last year he had a great year. He had a very similar.
And Jalen Johnson, who was the previous GM's draft pick, by the way, you paid him. So even though he's a cornerstone of your franchise, or at least you think he is because you've signed him, you're paying him more. So
listen,
he has to be.
You better make and by you I mean them. They better make the right decision and make it quick, because you put on the tape of Caleb Williams and he'll make you 4 or 5 plays that are just eye popping and that keep you coming back. His fundamentals are not good right now. His accuracy is not good. Sloppy with his ball fakes. Like, he needs to be coached and needs somebody to kind of point him in the right direction. I am not absolving him of all of this. He's a 23-year-old young man who was the first pick of the draft for a lot of reasons. He's got to be better. But I'm convinced now more than ever. Like, again, you could convince me otherwise, but I need to see an offensive-minded guy here that can get him to where you need him to go.
All right, let's open up the lines and take some calls here. What do you think, Bears fans? We gave you the Poles resume, or at least a lot of it. Any counters to what we were saying? I can't, and now I got to give Poles new money. So, again, for those who don't know, Ryan Poles has 1 year left of his deal. You can't let Ryan Poles be a part of the hiring and then have him only have 1 year left and then fire him after 1 year and then have the new coach here with then looking for a new GM. You're doing things backwards again. So if you do keep Poles, he's got to get an extension. And after everything we said, you're going to give him a new contract? How do you do that? 332-3776 is the phone number. Then what Waddle was talking about, Caleb. Yeah, a lot of sexy plays.
Yeah.
But a lot of basics that are not being done correctly.
That is correct.
And 3 points is unacceptable. Slow starts unacceptable. And the kid has, like, I give him a lot of credit for what he's dealt with, but he is really broken right now.
He was bad in the first half.
So we'll take all your calls on that.